It's 3:42 p.m. in the South China Sea. The radar operator on USS John Finn watches two contacts appear at the edge of his screen, both moving at 40 knots, straight toward him. These aren't fishing boats. These are Chinese guided missile destroyers, and they're accelerating. The USS John Finn cuts through calm water under clear skies. It's a routine freedom of navigation operation, the kind the US Navy runs constantly in these waters. Standard patrol, standard route. Nothing out of the ordinary. The Arleigh Burke-class destroyer displaces 9,200 tons fully loaded. It stretches 505 feet from bow to stern. 4 gas turbines generate 100,000 shaft horsepower. Maximum speed exceeds 30 knots. The ship carries 96 vertical launch cells loaded with Tomahawk cruise missiles, SM-2 surface-to-air missiles, and anti-submarine rockets. 2 triple torpedo tubes, 1 5-inch main gun, 2 phalanx close-in weapon systems. Advanced Aegis radar can track hundreds of targets simultaneously. This is one of the most capable warships ever built, until the radar screen changes. Contact 2 vessels bearing 138 degrees, heading toward us. Speed 40 knots. The voice from Combat Information Center breaks the silence on the bridge. Every head turns. 40 knots isn't patrol speed. That's pursuit speed. That's interception speed. That's a speed that says, "We're coming for you." The first officer raises his binoculars and scans the horizon. 2 white wakes cut across the blue water. Long trails behind dark hulls pushing hard through the ocean. The shapes become clearer, sleek, angular, modern. The distinctive silhouette of Chinese Type 052D destroyers emerges from the haze. Type 052D destroyers. Chinese frontline warships. These vessels carry phased array radars mounted in panels on their superstructure. 4 flat faces scanning in all directions simultaneously. They pack vertical launch cells loaded with anti-ship missiles capable of hitting targets beyond the horizon. Each destroyer displaces 7,500 tons. Each carries a crew of 280 trained sailors. Each represents billions of dollars in Chinese naval investment and years of technological development. And both are heading directly toward the American warship at maximum approach speed. The captain enters the bridge. He doesn't rush. He doesn't show concern. He walks to the center console and looks at the tactical display. The 2 red symbols move steadily across the screen. Their course lines intersect with the blue symbol representing USS John Finn. The geometry is precise. The intercept is deliberate. The room stays quiet except for the low hum of electronics and the distant throb of the ship's engines. Sailors stand at their stations. Hands hover near controls. Eyes track screens. Training takes over. Everyone knows their role. Another update comes from Combat Information Center. CPA projected less than 2 nautical miles. Both vessels on intersecting course. Time to CPA 12 minutes. CPA means closest point of approach. It's the calculation of how near 2 ships will pass each other if they maintain current speed and heading. Anything under 2 miles between warships is considered deliberately close. Anything under 2 miles sends a message. Anything under 2 miles requires justification and explanation. The captain's response is calm. Maintain course. Maintain speed. Log all data. Notify Fleet Command. No panic. No evasive maneuvers. No defensive posturing. The USS John Finn continues forward at steady speed. The Chinese destroyers keep coming. The distance closes. 5 miles. 4 miles. 3 miles. The tension builds with every update from radar. The Chinese vessels shift formation. Instead of approaching head-on, they begin to split. One moves to port. One moves to starboard. They're positioning themselves on both sides of the American ship. Classic pincer formation. Standard intimidation tactic. A sailor in Combat Information Center zooms in on the radar returns. The computer identifies the hull numbers. The database pulls up the specifications automatically. Type 052D Luoyang the Free Class. Displacement 7,500 tons. Length 157 meters. Beam 18 meters. Draft 6.5 meters. Propulsion combined diesel and gas turbine delivering 70,000 horsepower. Maximum speed 30+ knots sustained. Armament includes 64 vertical launch cells carrying HHQ-9 surface-to-air missiles with 200-kilometer range and YJ-18 anti-ship cruise missiles with 540-kilometer range. Main gun 130mm capable of firing 40 rounds per minute. 2 Type 730 close-in weapon systems for point defense. Anti-submarine torpedoes and rocket launchers. These are not patrol boats. These are not Coast Guard cutters. These are combat vessels designed specifically to sink other warships in blue water operations. The electronic warfare officer calls out a new development. Starboard vessel has changed radar mode. Active surface track. Fire control radar now active. That means the Chinese destroyer just switched from passive observation to active targeting. Its fire control radar is now painting the USS John Finn with focused electromagnetic energy, measuring range down to the meter, calculating speed to the decimal. Tracking course changes in real time. Building a complete firing solution that could guide missiles to target. The captain doesn't flinch. His voice remains steady. Log it, continue, weapons hold. Inside Combat Information Center, the SLQ-32 electronic warfare system springs to life. Banks of sophisticated receivers analyze every radar pulse coming from the Chinese ships. Frequency measured in megahertz. Pulse repetition rate counted in microseconds. Scan pattern mapped in 3 dimensions. Power output calculated in watts. Modulation characteristics recorded. Every single characteristic gets captured, recorded, and stored in encrypted databases. This data is intelligence gold. Every radar system has a unique electromagnetic signature as distinctive as a fingerprint. Once you know that signature, you can identify the radar anywhere in the world from its emissions alone. You can build electronic countermeasures specifically tuned to jam or deceive it. You can calculate its maximum detection range, its minimum detection threshold, its strengths and weaknesses. You can exploit its blind spots and vulnerability windows. The Chinese destroyers think they're intimidating the American ship with aggressive radar targeting. What they're actually doing is handing over their complete technical specifications for free. Every second they radiate, they compromise operational security. The Chinese vessels complete their maneuver. They now sail parallel to USS John Finn, one on the port side, one on the starboard side, formation sailing at high speed. 3 warships cutting through the South China Sea in a tight tactical pattern, separated by less than 1 nautical mile. To the Chinese, this looks like dominance. They've boxed in the American vessel. They've demonstrated superior numbers. They've shown they can operate in coordinated formation at dangerously close range. They've proven they can maneuver with precision and intimidate with presence. To the Americans, this looks like opportunity. The Chinese destroyers just presented their entire flank profile at optimal sensor range. Every radar array is now visible from multiple angles. Every weapon system is fully exposed to observation. Every antenna can be photographed, measured, and cataloged. Every structural detail can be analyzed for signature reduction effectiveness or lack thereof. The captain turns to the air operations officer. Launch the Seahawk. Full sensor package. Minutes later, an MH-60R Seahawk helicopter lifts off from the flight deck at the stern. The rotor wash kicks up spray from the ocean surface. The aircraft banks hard to port and accelerates toward the Chinese destroyers at 150 knots. Inside the helicopter, the sensor operator activates the complete reconnaissance suite. FLIR targeting camera. Advanced forward-looking infrared technology that can see in complete darkness, can see through haze and light rain, can zoom in from miles away and resolve details smaller than a license plate. High-resolution electro-optical camera for daylight photography. Electronic support measures receiver for signal intelligence. Data link transmitting everything in real time back to the ship. The flyer camera locks onto the closest Chinese destroyer. The operator zooms in gradually. The image on his screen shows incredible detail despite the distance. Individual vertical launch cell hatches, radar panel surfaces and mounting structures. Communication antennas with specific gain patterns. Weapon mounts with visible ammunition loading mechanisms, sensor housings, life raft canisters. Even crew members visible on deck, the footage records automatically, frame after frame. Every angle captured, every system documented. The helicopter orbits slowly, maintaining safe distance but optimal sensor geometry. Then something happens. A bright flash on the flyer screen. The sensor operator recognizes it immediately from training. Laser designation pulse? The Chinese destroyer just painted the helicopter with a targeting laser. It's a warning shot without firing a shot. It's a threat wrapped in deniability. It's saying get back or we'll engage with something more substantial than light. The helicopter crew doesn't retreat. The pilot maintains course. Instead, the flyer camera pivots automatically and locks onto the exact source of the laser emission. The targeting computer calculates range, bearing, and elevation. The operator marks the coordinates precisely. Laser source identified, marking position, recording spectral signature. The Chinese just revealed the exact location of their optical tracking system. They exposed the mounting position. They demonstrated the engagement procedure. They showed response time and crew proficiency. That information goes straight into the intelligence database. Another vulnerability cataloged, another weakness documented, another tactical detail filed away for future reference. Back on the bridge of USS John Finn, a radio crackles to life suddenly. VHF Channel 16, the international hailing frequency that all ships monitor continuously, a voice speaks in Mandarin, clear but with an edge. Unidentified American warship, you are in Chinese territorial waters. Leave immediately or face consequences. The bridge crew listens. They don't respond emotionally. They don't argue or justify. The communications officer picks up the radio handset calmly and replies in clear, measured English. This is United States naval vessel operating in accordance with international law in international waters. We will continue our lawful operations. No raised voice. No anger, no defensiveness. Just facts stated plainly. The Chinese radio goes silent for 30 seconds. Then responds again. You are violating Chinese sovereignty. Depart immediately. The American response doesn't change. We are exercising freedom of navigation rights in international waters consistent with the UN Convention on the Law of the Sea. No escalation. No backing down. Just consistent repetition of legal position. Here's what just happened beneath the surface of this radio exchange. China claimed these waters as territorial. The United States rejected that claim explicitly by continuing operations without deviation. This isn't about navigation anymore. This is about sovereignty. This is about who controls these waters and who has the authority to tell other nations where they can and cannot sail. The South China Sea covers 1.4 million square miles of ocean. China claims almost all of it based on historical rights supposedly dating back centuries. Vietnam, Philippines, Malaysia, Brunei, and Taiwan all have competing claims based on proximity and continental shelf rights. International courts, including the Permanent Court of Arbitration, have rejected China's expansive claims as inconsistent with the UN Convention on the Law of the Sea and lacking legal foundation. But international courts don't enforce maritime boundaries. They issue rulings and opinions. Navies enforce boundaries. Warships establish facts. Presence creates reality. The Chinese destroyers tighten formation again. The distance narrows further. Now less than 1 mile separates the 3 warships. At these speeds, at this range, there's virtually no room for error. A mechanical failure on any ship could cause collision, a steering malfunction, an engine casualty. Any problem becomes a crisis instantly. Every sailor on all 3 ships understands exactly what's happening. This is pressure warfare. This is gray zone conflict. No shots fired. No weapons locked. No direct combat. Just presence and positioning used as tools of coercion. The Chinese strategy is transparent to professional naval officers. Close the distance aggressively. Create artificial tension. Force the Americans to react. If USS John Finn alters course or changes speed, China can claim they controlled the situation. They can report to their leadership that intimidation tactics work. They can use it as propaganda showing American ships yielding to Chinese pressure, but if USS John Finn maintains course rigidly, the risk of collision increases with every passing minute. At high speed in close formation, 3 warships operating in confined space create genuinely dangerous situations. One miscalculation, one equipment failure, one moment of confusion or miscommunication. That's all it takes to turn a standoff into a collision. A collision into casualties. Casualties into an international crisis that neither side wants, but neither side can back away from. The captain faces a genuine dilemma. Hold course and risk an accident that could spark something far worse. Or alter course slightly and hand China a propaganda victory that encourages more aggressive behavior in the future. He chooses to hold. The decision is doctrinal but also personal. Yield once and you'll be tested again. Stand firm and you establish boundaries. The USS John Finn continues forward. Same heading, same speed, not 1 degree of course change, not 1 knot of speed adjustment. The Chinese destroyers match pace perfectly on both flanks. 30 minutes pass. On the bridge, sailors watch screens and scan the horizon continuously. Combat Information Center tracks every movement on multiple displays. Electronic warfare systems record every signal emission. The Seahawk helicopter maintains position overhead in a slow orbit, camera still rolling, still recording every detail. 3 warships. 1 contested ocean. 0 room for mistakes. The tension builds incrementally with every passing minute. Radio silence settles over the formation. No communication. No coordination. Just 3 hulls pushing through water in tight formation that requires constant attention and precise ship handling. Inside Combat Information Center, junior officers monitor the tactical display with unwavering focus. The 3 symbols remain locked in formation. Course steady at 270 degrees. Speed constant at 18 knots. No deviation. No variation, a petty officer whispers quietly to his shipmate. How long do you think they'll keep this up? The other sailor doesn't answer. He just watches the screen, tracking the symbols. The Chinese understand something important about pressure tactics. Time works in their favor initially. The longer this continues, the more pressure builds on the American captain. Eventually, something has to give. Equipment reaches limits. Nerves fray. Orders come from higher command questioning the risk. Something breaks, but the US Navy has run these operations for decades across multiple theaters. They've faced Soviet destroyers in the Cold War playing similar games in the North Atlantic. They've navigated strait transits under hostile observation from shore batteries. They've operated in contested waters from the Black Sea to the Persian Gulf to the Taiwan Strait. This isn't new territory. This is doctrine refined through experience. The standing orders for freedom of navigation operations are simple and unambiguous. Maintain course unless safety of the ship requires alteration. Do not yield to intimidation or coercion. Do not escalate through aggressive maneuvers. Do not back down from lawful operations. The captain follows those orders exactly as written. Another update from Combat Information Center. Chinese vessels maintaining formation. No change in behavior. No additional radar emissions beyond tracking mode. No weapons guidance systems activated. The stalemate continues minute by minute. Then something shifts subtly. Combat Information Center announces a change in the pattern. Chinese vessels reducing speed. Port contact decreasing to 16 knots. Starboard contact matching. The tactical display shows the red symbols slowing gradually. Their wakes flatten as engines reduce power. The hulls settle deeper in the water as hydrodynamic lift decreases, breaking formation. The Chinese destroyers peel away simultaneously. One turns to port in a wide arc. One turns to starboard, mirroring the maneuver. They increase separation deliberately. They drop back behind the USS John Finn, falling into trail position. The tight formation breaks apart cleanly. A young sailor in Combat Information Center whispers almost to himself. They blinked. The captain doesn't react with triumph or relief. He simply says in the same steady tone he's maintained throughout. Maintain course. Log final data. Secure from general quarters. Resume normal steaming watch. The Chinese destroyers fade into the distance gradually. Their radar contacts move toward the edge of the screen. The ocean feels wider again. The pressure lifts. The encounter is over. USS John Finn continues its patrol. Same heading, same speed. As if nothing happened. As if the last hour was just another routine watch period, but everything happened. Later, when intelligence analysts review the complete data package, they'll see the full picture. 2 Chinese Type 052D destroyers attempted a coordinated close interception of a U.S. warship conducting lawful freedom of navigation operations in international waters. They used high-speed approach, formation sailing, radar targeting, and radio challenges to create pressure and force a response. The United States Navy maintained course throughout the entire encounter. No deviation, no yield, no concession. No acknowledgement of Chinese territorial claims. In other words, freedom of navigation stands. International waters remain international waters. Legal precedent holds. The intelligence gathered during the encounter fills multiple detailed reports that will be studied for months. Radar signatures across multiple frequencies. Precise hull numbers and unit identification. Formation tactics and coordination procedures. Response times from initial detection to tactical positioning. Communication procedures and command protocols. Laser targeting parameters and engagement sequences. Everything documented, everything analyzed, everything cross-referenced with previous encounters, everything stored for future reference. And tactical development, the Chinese gained nothing except confirmation that intimidation doesn't work against professional navies operating under clear rules of engagement and strong command. Guidance, the Americans gained technical intelligence and reinforced legal precedent for navigation rights that benefit all nations. But here's the deeper truth that extends beyond this single encounter. This wasn't really about ships or radars or formation sailing. This was about something bigger and more fundamental. This was about power projection without weapons. This was about testing boundaries without crossing them into actual combat. This was about establishing norms through repeated interactions. This was about answering a simple but critical question. Who controls these waters? The encounter provided the answer clearly. Not China. Not through intimidation, not through close approaches, not through radio challenges claiming territorial rights. International law controls these waters. And navies that follow international law can sail them freely without interference. Every close encounter like this sends ripples far beyond the immediate participants. Other nations watch carefully. They take detailed notes. They adjust their own calculations about what they can and cannot do. They recalibrate their assessment of American resolve. China tested American resolve directly. America demonstrated it without ambiguity. The message received by every observer was crystal clear. The United States will not yield navigation rights based on proximity pressure or territorial claims unsupported by international law. That message matters in Tokyo, where Japan faces similar Chinese pressure. It matters in Manila, where the Philippines depends on American security guarantees. It matters in Hanoi, where Vietnam contests Chinese claims. It matters everywhere nations depend on freedom of navigation for trade, security, and sovereignty. The South China Sea carries 1/3 of global maritime trade by volume. $5 trillion in goods transit these waters annually. Any nation that controls access to these shipping lanes controls global commerce flows. Any nation that can close these waters can strangle economies thousands of miles away. China wants that control. China believes historical claims justify modern dominance. The United States ensures no single nation achieves that level of control over international trade routes. This encounter was one moment in a much longer competition. Not the first confrontation, not the last. Just another data point in an ongoing test of wills that plays out daily across these waters. A sailor asked the question earlier. Do you think this is how the next conflict starts? The real answer is more complex and more nuanced. Modern conflicts don't start with single dramatic incidents. They start with patterns, with repeated boundary testing, with gradual normalization of aggressive behavior, with slow erosion of international norms until what seemed unacceptable becomes routine. That's why every encounter matters. Every response sends a signal. Every decision reinforces or undermines the rules that prevent competition from escalating into conflict. USS John Finn held course. That decision reinforced the rules. That decision maintained stability. That decision made the next conflict less likely, not more. The ocean behind the ship churns white from propeller wash. Ahead only open water and horizon. The patrol continues. The mission continues. The message continues. International waters remain international for all nations that respect international law. Subscribe for more.